welcome to this brief video on building compliance through strength-based and play-based approaches. Before we begin, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kellie Baur, and I'm a nationally certified school psychologist at Glendale Regional Program in Anne Arundel County. For those unfamiliar with our program, I work with students with really big feelings that often have trouble communicating those feelings in effective ways, which is a major reason why I chose this topic to talk about with you today. I have a husband and two boys who consume most of my time. And I wanted to, before we begin, just kind of talk in full disclosure. So when I agreed to do this little webinar video, I clicked reply all and I said, I'd like to share a topic that is more of a to do as I say, not as I do approach. And I only share this to highlight that just because one might have an expertise in a field, it doesn't mean that it always goes accordingly. So if you were to come into my home on my best days, you'd see all of these strategies that I'm going to set forth. And on my worst days, you might not see any. So with that said, this topic needs substantially more time than what I'm delivering to you today. So hopefully it'll be a good start and allow you to feel more equipped to lay that foundational groundwork for building a positive relationship with your child that will encourage more compliant behavior. And at the bottom of this, you'll see my top character strengths, kindness, love, social intelligence, and zest. And we'll cover that in a little bit more depth in a minute. What we'll cover today. So we're going to integrate aspects from positive psychology into our parenting. We're going to understand basic behavior principles, identify ways to increase compliance, and we're going to be introduced to and practice a play-based activity aimed at increasing compliance. As we begin, I want you to think back to a recent positive memory that you've had with your child. It could be an experience, a trip, or even just a brief encounter with your child. It may be just you two or multiple people. And if you're having trouble coming up with one, first know that you're not alone. And it is likely why you clicked on this topic. But if that is the case, I really do urge you to pause the video or come back at a time when you can recall that positive memory. So now I want you to look at these character strengths. I want you to think about, in that memory, which of these attributes you displayed and which ones your child displayed. And just to be aware, this slide alone could consume the entirety of this video. So for time's sake, I'm going to provide links at the end to a great explanatory YouTube video and resources to the VI Institute website that will allow you to explore more on your own if character strengths are something that resonate with you. But the basic gist is that everyone inherently has all 24 of these traits, but at varying levels. And the more we can incorporate these and practice the actions related to these traits, the better our well-being. So at the beginning, I highlighted some of my top strengths, and I encourage you to consider yours and your child's top strengths and how they are displayed. So I would imagine zest, fairness, curiosity might ring at the top for your kiddos, while they might need a little bit more development or to strengthen more of their self-regulation and prudence skills. And the important part of this is, why does it matter? And it's because it's a symbiotic process. So if your well-being improves, your child's well-being improves. And if your child's well-being improves, so does yours. And when our well-being improves, so is our relationships and just our overall willingness to work with others and comply ultimately. So now we're going to go into covering the basic behavior principles that will help you understand what and why your child is doing what they're doing. We have three main columns: trigger, behavior, and consequence. And we're actually going to start in the middle column with behavior. So behavior simply means what the child is doing. So in our example and this video, we're going to cover mainly compliance or not following directions. With behaviors, they are all displayed or engaged in for two reasons, that two functions, what they're getting out of it, and it's either to get or avoid. So they're either getting attention, assistance, social interactions, activities, sensory stimulation, tangibles, or they're avoiding demands, sensory stimulation, activities. And once we figure out why they're doing what they're doing, we can help adjust the consequence afterwards. And the consequence is simply what happens after the behavior. So, and we are likely a part of that. We're peers, those in the environment around them. And we're asking, are we reinforcing those? Are we increasing the likelihood of that occurring? So, turning off a vacuum if they scream, or giving a donut because they're crying at the store. So you're increasing the likelihood of that same behavior occurring. Or are you weakening the behavior? So we're removing a positive consequence, such as a loss of a privilege, a timeout, or planned ignoring. So we're removing that donut. We're saying no when they're screaming in the store or tantruming, and not providing that, or presenting an aversive such as spanking or yelling. And I need to be very clear here that many forms of punishment may be effective at discontinuing behavior in the short term, but it has little effect and even can be detrimental in the long term. So I am certainly not in any way endorsing or recommending the use of any physical punishment. I'm simply providing the information of what the provision of a consequence looks like. And then the trigger to kind of go backwards is actually what happens before. So in the example of noncompliance, it's often a demand is given, something is being told to do. And there are ways that we can provide that demand beforehand to increase compliance. As mentioned, there are things we can do to increase the likelihood of the child complying based on just how the direction is stated. We want to phrase things directly and positively, clear and simply, and developmentally appropriately. So, positively does not simply mean chipper. It means that you're stating what you'd rather the child do than what you don't want them to do. So, instead of don't yell, we're using quiet voice, or no hitting, we're saying safe hands. Clear and simple, not stated as a question. So the difference in please put your shoes away versus are you planning to leave these here for us to trip over all day? We want them to be developmentally appropriate, and that's for the younger kiddos, we often want it fewer than 5 words, just for them to have less to process and to increase that likelihood. To move through an example, we're going to use clean up. So if we're transitioning to a new activity, we may say we need to clean up. If they comply, we're going to praise. We're going to offer attention and be specific. I love the way that you're cleaning up. Awesome. Thank you so much for following my direction. We may high five, smile, that positive affection, and we might even randomly reward them. It can be a tangible, an edible, something that the child will definitely enjoy. If they are not following directions in any way, shape, or form, we're seeing other behaviors, we're going to validate. I know it's hard to stop playing. Then we're going to redirect, but it's time to clean up. So we're going to reinforce that expected behavior, which is you clean, and then offer the alternatives that would not maintain the problem behavior. So you clean up or time out. And then if they don't comply, you are going to follow through with that timeout. And then we're going to always return to the expected behavior, i.e. the cleaning, until the child has complied. So we're not allowing them to escape. And when we say do not let them realize the function, that means that get or avoid whatever they're trying to get out of it from their problem behavior. So now back to playing, which is the fun part of this. We're going to get in a practice mindset because for me, it's always easier to commit to something when you have a plan and you're ready and there's time set aside to practice. So this is meant to be a positive experience, but it can be challenging, especially at first. Keep at it and remember with the strengths at the beginning, we're going to try really hard to incorporate those and point out the strengths, and especially for those with those high energy levels that we're pointing out those appropriate times to show it and in a really meaningful way. So some of this is going to be a little bit contingent on development. The focus for Bubbles specifically in this picture is pre-K to 2, but you can modify any of these activities for any age. So you'll grab a timer, you want a discrete start and end. You're going to try to build in these 5 or 10 minute activities weekly and daily if you can. The more often you can do it, the more likely you're going to increase that compliance and further build on that relationship. So we're going to give variable commands in this example of bubbles. You might state something like pop 5 bubbles, ask for more, turn around between each bubble popped. You try, stay still so that, don't pop them while they land on you, working on that self-control. If they're complying, you're going to praise. Throughout the interaction, you're going to highlight their strengths and praise their compliance. I love how you're following my directions. You should be proud of yourself. And you may even want to reward with something like offering an extra minute for that full compliance. But then anytime a problem behavior is observed, you're going to respond accordingly based on that chart before. So if we're seeing, for example, yelling or attention seeking, you're going to give one prompt and then you're going to turn your back until they've complied. So ask for more, or I turn around, or pop 5 only. And then you're also, a good example might be if your kid wants a turn, you might say my turn first, but then if you see squealing or whining or pouting, that's when you would ignore, turn your back. And then if they discontinue, you turn back and try again. And if you would continue that cycle for the duration of the 5 or 10 minute activity, offering the praise as soon as they've complied. I will say for kiddos with language delays, sometimes we have to do it more behaviorally first. So mommy's turn, Johnny's turn, and then quickly give them a turn when you don't see that presence of the problem behavior. Some other examples for those who maybe don't like bubbles or for different age groups, we can also do this with reading, playing, or other sports activities, cleaning, coloring, taking turns, really any activity this can be incorporated into. And that's all I have for you today. So if you're in continuing need of behavioral support, you can obviously reach out to your child's school counselor, psychologist within their building. Or if you have questions specific to this presentation, you're welcome to contact myself or someone from the Office of School and Family Partnerships. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation.